So we've got another memoir controversy brewing, and honestly, I've been down this rabbit hole before, and it's giving me serious deja vu. Today, we're diving into the latest drama surrounding the Salt Path author Raynor Winn, who's facing some pretty serious allegations about fabricating key elements of her best-selling memoir that just got the Hollywood treatment with Gillian Anderson and Jason Isaacs. Let's break down what's happening here. Raynor Winn's The Salt Path has been an absolute phenomenon since 2018. We're talking over 2 million copies sold worldwide. The book tells this incredible story of how she and her husband Moth lost their home through a bad business investment and then walked 630 miles along England's coast path while Moth was battling a terminal diagnosis. It's the kind of inspiring true story that publishers dream about, and Hollywood clearly thought so too, turning it into a film starring some serious A-listers. But here's where things get messy. The Observer just dropped a bombshell investigation claiming that Winn, whose real name is allegedly Sally Walker, didn't lose her home due to a bad investment at all. Instead, they're alleging she embezzled around £64,000 from her employer, got arrested, and had to borrow £100,000 at 18% interest to avoid criminal charges. The investigation also questions whether her husband's terminal diagnosis was accurate, given that he's still alive and active more than a decade later. Winn has fired back, calling the Observer article highly misleading and saying she's taking legal advice. But here's the kicker. The charity PSPA that had been working with the couple has already cut ties, saying too many questions currently remain unanswered. Now, if this story sounds familiar, that's because we've been here before. Like, a lot. The memoir genre has been absolutely plagued by these scandals, and honestly, it's becoming a depressingly predictable pattern. Let's start with the granddaddy of them all, James Frey's A Million Little Pieces. This 2003 memoir about addiction recovery became massive after Oprah picked it for her book club. But then, the smoking gun exposed that huge chunks of it were fabricated. Frey claimed he spent 87 days in jail when it was actually just a few hours. The fallout was spectacular. Oprah dragged him back on her show for one of the most uncomfortable interviews in TV history, calling him out for betraying millions of readers. What's fascinating about Frey's case is that even recently, he's still defending himself, claiming the book was 85% true and comparing himself to Picasso and Rembrandt. He actually said to the New York Times, "She told more lies to the public times 1,000 than I ever have about Oprah." The audacity is honestly impressive. Then we had Margaret Seltzer, who wrote Love and Consequences under the pseudonym Margaret B. Jones. She claimed to be a half-white, half-Native American foster child who ran drugs for the Bloods in South Central LA. Reality? She was a white woman from the wealthy Sherman Oaks area who went to private school. The whole thing unraveled when her sister saw her photo in the New York Times and called the publisher. And don't get me started on Misha de Fonseca's Misha, a memoir of the Holocaust years. She claimed she survived the Holocaust by living with wolves, actual wolves, and walking 2,000 miles across Europe as a child. When that was exposed as fiction, she defended it by saying it was my reality, my way of surviving. The My Truth defense has become the go-to excuse for these hoaxes. Greg Mortenson's 3 Cups of Tea was another major scandal. His inspiring story about building schools in Afghanistan and Pakistan after getting lost on K2 was largely fabricated according to a damning 60 Minutes investigation. They found that many of the schools he claimed to have built either didn't exist or were built by someone else. So where does the Salt Path fit into this pattern? There are some similarities that are honestly pretty concerning. Like other memoir fraudsters, Winn appears to have used a pseudonym, Sally and Tim Walker versus Raynor and Moth Winn. She's created this incredibly compelling narrative of overcoming adversity that publishers and audiences ate up. And when challenged, she's falling back on that familiar, "This is our true story" defense. But there are some key differences too. Unlike Frey or Seltzer, Winn isn't denying the core experience. They apparently did walk the coast path. The allegations seem to be more about the circumstances that led to it and some details about the husband's condition. It's more like what happened with Mortenson, where the basic framework was real, but key details were allegedly fabricated or exaggerated. What's particularly interesting is the medical aspect. The Observer spoke to medical professionals who questioned Moth's corticobasal degeneration diagnosis, pointing to his survival and activity level more than a decade later. If true, this would be similar to how Frey exaggerated his criminal record and jail time, taking a real situation and dramatically amplifying it for narrative effect. Here's what really gets me about all these cases. Where the hell are the publishers? Random House admitted they did no fact-checking on Frey's book before publication. After the scandal, they had to offer refunds and set aside $2.35 million for lawsuits. You'd think the industry would have learned, but apparently not. The academic Sue Weiss makes an interesting point that these books shouldn't just be dismissed when exposed as fake. They can still have literary merit as fiction, but that misses the point. When someone markets a book as a memoir, they're making a specific contract with readers about truth and authenticity. Breaking that contract isn't just about literary categories. It can involve real financial and emotional harm. Look, I want to give Winn the benefit of the doubt. but the patterns here are just too familiar. The use of pseudonyms, the inspiring against all odds narrative, the defensive response when questioned, the charity cutting ties. We've seen this movie before, and it doesn't usually end well for the author. The fact that PSPA, a charity that actually works with people who have the condition Moth was allegedly diagnosed with, felt compelled to terminate their relationship speaks volumes. These organizations don't make decisions like that lightly. What really bothers me is how these scandals damage trust in legitimate memoirs. There are countless real stories of people overcoming incredible hardships that deserve to be heard and believed. When authors fabricate or dramatically embellish their stories, it makes readers more skeptical of everyone. The film adaptation adds another layer of complication. The producers say they did all necessary due diligence, but clearly that wasn't enough. Now you have Anderson and Isaacs, who gave their credibility to this project, potentially caught up in a scandal that could have been avoided with better fact-checking. If I had to bet money on this one, I think we're looking at another case of a memoir that contains significant fabrications or embellishments, probably falling somewhere between the Frey and Mortensen cases. The core experience may be real, but key details that make the story more compelling and marketable have likely been altered or invented. The publishing industry needs to learn from these repeated failures and implement actual fact-checking processes, and readers need to maintain healthy skepticism, even when, especially when, a story seems too perfect or inspiring to be true. What do you think? Are we being too harsh on memoirists, or is this a pattern that needs to be called out? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories behind the stories.